is an obstetrician here in Bozeman. Her topic is understanding abortion, access, and women's health care today in America, and the true meaning behind LR 131, the Born Alive Referendum. And I would like to give a big thanks to Beth Sir, who really actually kind of planned this, because she put us in touch with Claire. And I would like to add that Claire has been really, really gracious and generous and enthused about speaking to us. And we can't thank you enough, because I think we need the information badly that you have to give us. So thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. Acquire too much. As Jan said, my name is Claire Putnam. I'm an obstetrician gynecologist. I graduated in 1999 from medical school. And I first started in family medicine, and then I switched over realizing I really love to take care of women. Being a woman myself, I thought it was a great opportunity to learn a lot about myself, healthcare for women. And since about 2004, I've been out on my own being an obstetrician gynecologist. Most of the time I worked in California, and I worked in a variety of settings, everywhere from an institution, educational institution, a university, all the way down to through Stanford, and in community clinics, and also in clinics that had basically our FHQ clinics, where they have their federally funded clinics that provide care to women who don't have insurance, foreigners, lots of people who are in need. I also spent some time in Africa, which was a real eye-opener experience for me, going into Kenya and working with women of different culture and backgrounds and seeing healthcare there. So today, though, I do run She Healthcare Clinic in down on 7th Avenue. You might have seen it. It's a dark blue building with a bright green door. And you may have seen me in the paper recently. I did close my clinic, sadly, because of healthcare today in Montana and what it means to try and navigate being an obstetrician gynecologist with all the healthcare challenges that we're faced with. When they overturned Roe versus Wade, for me, it was sort of a gut punch, because I understand, like many people don't, what abortion really is and what it isn't, and what it means for women to not have access to that. So I'm trying to figure out what to be when I grow up. And thank you for listening today. I'm really happy for you to interrupt me at any time and also ask questions, clarify things. Please do. I'd love to have this be more interactive, especially since we're a small group. And also, please excuse my slides. Let's see if I can do this. Let's go here. So I do have limited technological capabilities. This is not my strong suit. I don't have good slide makers behind me, and I do this all by myself. I am someone who has done abortions and does do them. So I want you to make this very clear that I am someone who some people would term an abortionist. I have also refused at many times to do abortions for women. I've said, no, I don't think that's the right thing to do in this case. I've reached out to women and said, I really want you to get some counseling, and I think this support group will help you. What I'm hearing from you is that you really want this pregnancy. I've also talked women into having abortions, and that's a really hard thing to do sometimes. When women come in and they want this pregnancy so badly, but it's going to hurt them, it's going to really maybe even kill them. It's an important decision, and somebody has to say, look, we have to take this pregnancy out of you to save you. And women, you know, that's a very difficult decision for women to make. And the doctors who are making that decision and helping women through that process, we are really often challenged. And now we're being challenged by laws, making it even worse. I have also not done abortions. I have refused to do them in several situations, and I have also begged women, straight up. I am a board certified obstetrician gynecologist. As I said, I do run She Health, which I've temporarily closed, and I've been flying back and forth to California. I work another job. One job isn't enough these days as a doctor. You have to make ends meet. So you have to go 2 places. And since the Dobbs decision was overturned, I've really made a point to speak up. I feel one of the saddest things to me is that doctors like myself are silent. People like me, we are not coming out and saying what we need to say about this. To me, the silence means that we don't care, or it means that we are too afraid. We're afraid for our jobs. Most doctors are now employed, When you're an employed physician by a hospital or group, you are often not allowed to have a voice. You have to be quiet, because if you say something that's against the organization or the group, or you say it in a wrong way, you are often, your job is in jeopardy. And so that's a really terrible place for physicians to be in today. And I am not in that position because I'm self-employed and I also speak too much. I talk. So I've decided to be very vocal. I've written a couple articles in the paper and I'm speaking on every opportunity. So I thank Beth for saying, hey, come speak here. And Jan said, yeah, so here I am. I'm also trying to talk about what birth control is, what laws mean in healthcare, and really educate. That's my goal. And most of my talk today really should be conversational. Please do feel free to interrupt me if you want to add something, if I didn't make point clear, or you have a question. Okay. This is my dream, just to sit on the beach and not have to worry about anything. Somebody else can do the abortions, healthcare can be taken care of, and I'll just sit on that little sandbar beach. Doesn't work like that. I have some polls. Okay, who thinks abortion should be legal in all cases? Raise your hand. Okay, great. I actually don't. I think we should have some laws and restrictions. It's funny, but I do. I like to do this. Who even knows what it means to be legal in all cases? I don't even know what that means. What does it mean to be legal in all cases? Does that mean somebody comes in at 39 weeks and we just slice open their belly, pull out their kid and dismember it? No, I don't think so. But these are the things that I have a real problem with. So many terms that we use in abortion and in healthcare today are so vague. There aren't true definitions. And then when you try to apply black and white laws to these things, it really creates a problem. So that's what I mean by who knows what it means to be legal in all cases. Even I don't know, and I don't even think it should be that way. Look at my automation here. Who thinks that birth control should be really free? Anybody? Okay, I do. I think it should be 100% free. Is it free right now? No, it's so not free. In fact, it's so expensive. Not only do women not have access to birth control, they can't afford birth control. That's a really important statement to make today. And one thing that I strongly believe we need to change if we want to end abortion or decrease them significantly. We need to have free birth control for all women. Next question. Who knows when a fetus is considered viable? Viable meaning the fetus comes out of the body, it's a baby or an infant at that point or a newborn, and it's viable. Does anybody know? What do you think?
Somewhere around 21, 22 weeks.
Nope, not quite.
23, 24.
23, 24 is really more accurate. Yep. 24 was when I started in medical school, we were really saying 26. Then when I went to residency, it was 25. Since residency, it's gone down to 24. And now they're pushing the envelope down to 23 and 22 weeks. Yeah, we can grunt about that a little bit. Because when we say that something's viable, does it mean it's going to have a quality of life? Does that mean that that baby can really come out what we call and live a good life? And that's a really difficult question. I don't have an answer for that because I don't know how to define what a good life is or what a worthy life is. It's not my job to decide that. But I can say with fact that 24-weekers, even today, come out and a lot of them need full-time care and have developmental difficulties. Many cannot eat normally. Many cannot see well enough, cannot go to school normally, and require a lifetime of care. That's a challenge. So when we're saying, and I'm going to go a little bit ahead now to the LR 131, when we're looking ahead to like the Infant Child Protection Act and every baby that's born with any sign of life, a twig, a little twitch of a finger, a slight gasp or breath, a heartbeat, even if it's very, very low, that we have to then intervene to do everything we can to save that baby and keep it alive, it's really a challenge. In the old days, we didn't have to make decisions like this because we didn't have all this technology. We really didn't. But now, with the advance of all this technology and laws that are coming into place to try and define what we're supposed to do in black and white terms, it's becoming so gray and murky, really. So viability, really 23 to 24 weeks is what we're looking at. Just recently, a few months ago, they were lauding the fact that they kept a 22-weeker alive and that baby is still alive. There are pushes right now that 22 weeks should be considered viability. That's huge. I don't know, again, I don't know the answer to this, but I have to look at it. And then one part of this discussion that's missing all the time is our resources and our limited resources. We have never thought about the resources and the limitation of them in medicine. Doctors don't even think about it. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about how our care can be wasteful and how we're impacting the environment around us and how we don't have enough ventilators for everyone and how we don't have enough supplies. We don't have enough medicines, antibiotics. We don't have enough doctors. We don't have certainly enough nurses. We've got to start talking about that. When we think about these things, I think we need to connect them. We're going to not do that today, but that's one thing I'm really thinking a lot about. Okay, who thinks we should make prostitution legal? Don't be shy. I really think we should. It's about time women get paid for the work that they do, honestly. I mean it. I mean it. I mean, think about, then you can actually regulate it, tax it, make sure people are safe in secure positions. It's already going on. Let's just legalize it. Make it up. I mean, that's my opinion. It's opinion, not an honest fact there. And the last thing I wanted to say is, I wanted to underline that apparently, and shake it up. You guys have to forgive me. I was like dueling around with my animation and apparently some of it worked or didn't work. And how expensive do you think it is right now to have a baby and have it all the way raised, all the way to college, not including college? Anybody know what that number is now in America? Before that, it's about $250,000. A lot of people cannot afford that to raise a child. We have made it very expensive. And then college, whew, talk about another $250,000 right there. Okay, that's going to raise. Okay, this is really where abortion becomes so confusing. These are all the types of abortions that I do and understand. But let me ask you if you understand any of them. There's a missed abortion, a septic abortion, incomplete abortion, inevitable abortion, therapeutic abortion, elective abortion, first trimester abortion, second trimester abortion, late trimester abortions, medication abortions, surgical abortions, iatrogenic abortions, spontaneous abortions, selective reduction abortions. That's a lot, right? So when we say we're going to ban abortions, don't you think some of these might be a little more reasonable not to ban? I do. And also the confusion around them is so messy. Even if you asked 3 or 4 doctors to define what these meant, probably you would have 3 different OBGYNs say, well, no, that's an inevitable one, and that's spontaneous, and that's incomplete. No, it's inevitable. I mean, we would argue about it because it's not black and white. Just to give you an idea, we call a miscarriage a missed abortion sometimes, using that term abortion, which has this sort of terrible connotation these days, right? A missed abortion, there's an embryo inside of you or a baby, embryo 8 weeks that doesn't have a heartbeat anymore, and you're not bleeding, it's in there, it's not growing, it's not going to become a baby, it's a missed abortion. And a lot of times we say we induce an abortion for that, or we induce a miscarriage. We now try to use the word miscarriage so that we can clarify that. But in the old days, abortion didn't have this sort of bad connotations. We used these terms. Another thing, a septic abortion. When a pregnancy is infected inside of the uterus, that isn't going to work out well. I don't care what gestation you are. That needs to come out of the uterus. I am obligated to save women's life, to help that uterus, to get that pregnancy out of her. But it's an abortion. So in Texas right now, can I do a septic abortion? I can't. What am I going to do if I were in Texas? I would say, look, you're really sick, your uterus is sick, it's infected. I need to get you out of this state so that we can clean out your uterus for you. Because doctors in Texas, if they did that and somebody said that wasn't that infected, you could have treated her with antibiotics, she would have been better and had a baby. That doctor could be tried, put in jail, fined, take away her medical license. That's awful. Creates fear. I'm afraid. I'm afraid to be a doctor these days. I hate to say that, but I am. And I don't really want to be a martyr. It's not really my tendency to go be a martyr. Yes, I'm going to do this just so maybe if I end up in jail, that'll be okay. I don't want to be in that position. I didn't go to medical school for that. And I didn't go and care for women all of these years to give that up. So this is part of the conundrum. We also have incomplete where the baby's already partially coming out. It's not going to become a full-grown baby that you hold in your hands. And it's our obligation to get that out, to complete it. Again, we're going to be in trouble for that. There are things like therapeutic abortions, where we're doing it to save a mother's life. Mothers today are ill. The healthcare of America is worse than it was 10 years ago. We have terrible obesity rates. Have you noticed that? It's like a chart going up and up like this. We also have increased risks of high blood pressure. Diabetes is on the rise. All of these things lead to sicker women who are then pregnant and have sicker outcomes with their babies. Instead of focusing all this attention on abortions and preventing them, we should really be taking all that money and energy and putting it into how can we make women healthier today? Women of childbearing age and before that, our teens. But we're not. We're focusing all of our money on Band-Aids on things, advanced healthcare, and trying to ban abortions. It's really wrong, in my opinion. We also have and we'll get into a little bit about the abortion facts in a minute, but I just want to show you how complicated this is and how many different scenarios arise around abortion, and how I'm going to give you a few stories in a minute about what you would do if you thought to yourself. And I know, again, I'm preaching to the choir. We need to invite people from like Three Forks and Manhattan next time, okay? Okay. Here's some stories about abortion that I've personally taken care of. The first one that I really want to share with you is I was fresh out of residency, fresh and spry, and I had a woman who came to my hospital when I was on labor and delivery ward, and she said to me, you know, I think I broke my bag of water. And I said, oh, let's check it. And I was concerned. And I checked her bag of water to check to see, and sure enough, her bag of water had ruptured. The problem was she was 21 weeks pregnant. So at 21 weeks, with a ruptured bag and there's no fluid around the baby, it's really a tremendously difficult situation. No matter how much you really want to have that baby, it's not going to end well. You have to get at least at that point all the way to 25 to 26 weeks. That's another 4 weeks of trying to carry a baby that doesn't have any water around it. And that what happens when there's not enough water around the baby is the lungs won't develop. It's a very important thing is to have the lungs and the fluid around the baby so that they breathe in that lung and it helps expand their lung tissue and it grows. But without it, it doesn't happen. Also, once you've broken your bag of water, all the bacteria that's down in our vagina normally can just jump into the uterus and become one. And I begged her. I said, you know, we have to take this baby out. We're going to have you, we can take you for a procedure called a DNE, dilatation and extraction, where we actually put the woman under very, very heavy anesthesia. She's comfortable, and we actually take the baby out. Clean out her uterus, make sure it's all no more infection, give her antibiotics, make sure she's fine for a couple days, and then send her home so she still has a complete uterus inside of her. Or sometimes we'll induce her if she's not too sick. But often we don't have a decision. If they're very sick, we have to go in. It's not a fun procedure, I'm going to tell you right now. Nobody loves to have it. Nobody wants to do it. I don't enjoy it. when I have to pull out pieces of a baby. But I'm trained to do that. I've done it. And I'll do it again because it's important. It saves lives. This woman refused to stay in the hospital. She wouldn't let me do it. She walked out against medical advice. I tried everything on her. I said, you're going to die. This isn't going to be a baby. You could die. You're going to use your uterus. I mean, I tried everything and she left. She didn't come back to me. She came back 2 weeks later to the other doctor who was on call. She was so sick. Her baby was still alive with a very, very rapid heartbeat because she had a fever of 103.4. Her kidneys were shutting down. She was so anemic from blood destruction. She was the sickest I've ever seen someone like this. And it's because she had a massive infection that was not only in her uterus, in the baby, it had taken over her body. She had sepsis. She was rushed to the operating room by my colleagues, and they were able to take the pregnancy out. And they ended up having to take out her uterus. And she was in the ICU for 3 months, trying to recover from the liver kidney damage. She wasn't the same woman after she left. And if I were in Texas and I said, I can't do this for you, it's just a crime, right? She's lucky she lived. She is. Some women do die when they walk out and they don't get their abortions. I saw that in Kenya. I did. So that's one story. A second story I just want to share with you now is something that happened locally. I have been doing abortions here quietly, clandestinely under the radar. You know, I had a young college student come in from MSU. She was originally from Texas and she was here, freshman. She went to a party. She was in a sorority. She remembers hanging out with her friends that she went with and a few guys. They were all partying and laughing. And then, according to her friends, she left with 3 of them in a car. She woke up in a field. Next. No underwear on, torn shirt. She thought her birth control would be working. She was on the pill. She didn't take any emergency contraception. And by the time she came to meet me, she was pregnant. She doesn't know what happened. She can't go and she's not going to speak up to the police. You know, sometimes there are exceptions for rape, but you have to report a rape. You have to somehow, as a woman, you're almost under obligation to prove it, as wrong as that is. That's awful. She came to me. Luckily, she was early in pregnancy, and I was able to give her the medication abortion, the pills. And she was able to have an abortion. She left the school. She's back. She left the school. This happens here. Final abortion story before we go on. I also take care of women who really want to be pregnant. They're choosing it, they're seeking it, and they've had miscarriages and they want to have healthy babies. But when the baby is not healthy, it's a challenge, right? You've wanted this baby, you have a baby that has trisomy 18 or trisomy 13 is my other patient here. She got pre-genetic testing, pre-early non-invasive prenatal testing, which we do now, which is an amazing technological advance. We can test your blood if you're pregnant at around 10 to 12 weeks gestation and see if the chromosomes are normal. That's an amazing advancement, right? Most of the time they are, and it's a happy result. But sometimes it isn't. It's particularly more common in women as we get older. And a lot of us are delaying childbirth. A lot of us are. And the risk of that abnormal chromosome baby are going up as you get older. And hers was not normal. These babies, I'm not talking Downs, which is a big gray area. I still feel very, very much that women should have their own choice and couples should make the choice whether they want to carry a baby with Downs and raise a baby with Downs. especially given all the challenges we have in America and in the world today. But these babies are considered to be incompatible with life, meaning they are barely going to make it. If they make it all the way to birth, they will be born, they will die usually within the first month or 2 or 3 afterwards, sometimes live as long as a year, but it's not a normal life, right? You're in and out of the hospital, you have tubes, feeding, sometimes surgeries. It's very expensive, very painful, I think, for those children, and very, very hard on those parents. It's a choice for parents, and I've been there for both of them. But this woman wanted to have an abortion, and I can do this. And I was her doctor here, and I have privileges at Livingston. And I said, I'll take you to Livingston, and I'll take this pregnancy out of you, the trisomy 13. And I couldn't, because Livingston said, you can't do it here. They should do it at Bozeman. They're bigger. We don't do that here. We don't have the staff who wants to do that. And I just said, whoa, okay, I see how it is. Went to Bozeman. Nope, we don't do it here. We don't do it ever. This poor woman, luckily she's healthy, and luckily we found her an option. She had to go to Missoula, and I've sent another one to Oregon for a similar situation. It's hard. These are hard cases. And for every case that I see, I could write a whole story about them. I'm not going to bore you with them all. These are the 6 Supreme Court justices who decided to overturn Roe versus Wade with the Dobbs decision. Little did they know what they have done. You know, to come in right under the first term of this court with these newly elected judges, several of them said, we're not going to do it. It's precedence, whatever. And do it right then in the middle of a pandemic that we're all not recovered from, and we're still undergoing, was terrible timing. We have healthcare shortages, and then all, without any precedence, they kicked it to the states, and look at how many states had automatic bans, just trigger bans in place. I'm really mad at these 6 people. I'm sorry, but I am. And I feel like they didn't do due diligence to look at the law and the effects of what it would be to the people and what the people really wanted before they did that. Now we're all dealing with it. Here's a little funny slide I like to lighten the humor. Remember, if anybody has questions, please feel free. This is what would happen if we controlled medicine. We'd get everybody mammograms, and they'd have to have it every 6 months. Sorry. I love that. Okay, most people don't know about abortion. Most women who have abortions actually already have children. The thought, and even my good friend who's in Berkeley, California, liberal Berkeley, where I'm from, I asked her, I said, we really need abortion. She goes, well, I don't know about that. Most of these, they just don't take their birth control, or they didn't get it. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's back up and really look at what abortion is. Because I think there is a really misunderstanding of what abortion is. First of all, no one ever has come to me going, yay, I'm getting an abortion today. It's not a joyful thing. It's a very hard decision. Women have to make that decision. It's on them. And it's a challenge. Most women who've had abortion are coming in for abortion have had children. And they're single. Most of them are single. Single mothers. Most, about 49% or so, maybe even more after inflation, really live under the poverty line. Does anybody here live under the poverty line in this room? I have no idea really, honestly, what that means to live under the poverty line. I'm ashamed to say that. I've never tried to say, this is my budget, this is how much money I have a child, I'm single, and I'm going to try and do this. I can imagine it, but I have no experience with that. It's really a terrible fact. And also 24% of women, they've had an abortion before age 45. 24, a quarter of us about. It's not a small number. It's an important thing. And most women They aren't coming back for 2 or 3 or 4. They've only had 1 and they don't want to do it again. So they do something so that they don't have to have it again. That's important too. It's not a repeat customer thing. One time at Kaiser Permanente, I had to do the abortion clinic one day. It's a role I had to do once in a while. And I had this woman come in and I looked at her slip and I saw G9P0T8. That means she's pregnant, no children, 8 abortions. And I walked in and I said, you know, I see here you've been pregnant 9 times. And she said, yes. And I said, and you have no children? And she said, that's right. And I said, no, what happened? Well, I've just had a bunch of abortions. And I said, well, have you been using birth control? No, I don't like birth control. This is my birth control. And I said to her, I don't like doing abortions. And I walked out. Somebody else walked in, don't worry, she got her abortion. But I just didn't feel like I could do that. But again, that's not the kind of person you want to go get pregnant and have a baby, right? Someone who doesn't care, doesn't want to have a baby. It's not the right person. But I'm just saying that's an exception to the rule. It's an exception. Thought I'd bring that up. Okay, moving on. You guys have to keep me on track too with time because I'm terrible. I'm a talker. I do a lot of other things, but I talk. Another thing, in 2019, 80% of abortions were done before the 10 weeks. 10 weeks, it's a little, looks almost like an alligator, you know. And 93% were done in the first trimester before 13 weeks. That's great numbers, right? These are not babies that are babies. They are not babies that have feelings undeveloped. They are early abortions. Only 7% were done in the second or third trimesters. And it's actually mostly we say second trimester because third trimester at 28 weeks or beyond, that's such a rare thing to have to do an abortion. It's really only in cases where you've got either grave fetal problems that are making the mother sick, or you've got a mom who's about to die and there's no way to, we try to save the baby, but it can't be saved. So those are very, very rare. I don't even want to talk about them. Although the pro-life movement, they like to show pictures of that and say that this is what abortion is, but it isn't really. Abortion today is mostly medication abortions now. We've reached over 50% where we give women medications that they can take and pass the fetus safely without complication. Over 50%. Does anyone remember when the pill RU486 was passed? Anybody remember the year? Yes, 2000. 2000 is right. And in France, it was, of course, in France, it was there before. But here in America, we made it legal in the year 2000. So 22 years ago. Now we're about to take it away. Very, very scary. All right. And then most of the abortions that are done, and really only 1% are done after 21 weeks. That's a really good statistics out of the Guttmeyer Institute. And also it's exceedingly rare, as I said, to do it after 24 weeks, which is when we consider viability these days. And abortions that are done after 24 weeks are only done in a few states in America already. And also they're only done when the mother's life is in real jeopardy. Usually in these situations, if the mom's getting sick, we as doctors, and these are usually wanted pregnancies, we want to try and do everything to get the baby delivered as safe and healthy as possible and try and keep that baby alive and do what we can, and also get the mom so she's not sick and dying. So these are not really abortions. I really would like to say that. It's very, very rare. Okay, here's a few little graph facts. I throw some of that in. Most women are getting abortions are Black. They're not even here in Montana. And also then a little bit less than that is the white population. And then Hispanics are about 20%. And then non-Hispanics make up the least. But mostly we're talking about African-American women in America. Another thing, again, distribution of age. Most women are getting abortions in their 20s. It's very rare to have teenagers getting abortions these days. And we did a tremendously great job in the last 2 decades of decreasing the teenage pregnancy rate through education and access to birth control. And that's a huge thing that we have been able to do in America. Also, our abortion rates in general over the past 3 decades have been going down. That's important. Although there's been a slight uptick we saw with the pandemic, 2019 and 2020. And some of that may also just be the facts of we are not having the access that we used to have to birth control. We do not have access to healthcare providers. And so we're seeing a rise in unwanted pregnancies. Yeah.
Was it that economic, because people lost jobs in the pandemic and they were afraid they couldn't afford another child, or are there no statistics to show?
I don't know whether they've really fleshed it out to that level, but there are several trends that I've seen lately as an obstetrician gynecologist. One trend that's been huge is that I am seeing many young women come to me and couples saying, I don't want to have children. I know I don't want to have children. They're asking me to take their tubes out to sterilize them. It's an interesting thing. When you look at the world today and you think, I don't know where the world's going to be in 10 or 20 years, and you think about bringing a child or a life into that, that causes hesitation for women. Also, if you look at the trends and how expensive it is to raise babies and how incomes are kind of trending down. Remember, the generation before us made the most money, and we are going to live at a lower standard of living. These are all factors in the world and the climate change. These are drawing young people into decisions now about their fertility later. Also, we know we have a mental health crisis. That has not gotten any better. And so I think women choosing to have abortions is linked to that. Not having access to drugs, not having access to mental well-being, to be able to have a pregnancy. And finally, the idea of getting your tubes out seems like an answer to the no abortion for you movement, right? There's a huge uptick, not only in tubal sterilizations for women, but also in vasectomies, young men going out and getting vasectomies. It's really interesting to me. I do tubal ligations for women. I do tubal sterilizations, and I do them because they are allowed to have them, and it's a right. And I will tell them about the risks and the benefits of it and the alternatives. But in the end of the day, if they make that choice for themselves, I'll do it for them. Interesting, huh? I know. Nothing here is not controversial today. Okay. Why do women seek abortions? First of all, a lot of women don't have birth control. What I love to tell my little young couples sometimes who come in and they tell me, I say, what did you do? And they said, yeah, well, you withdrew. And I said, well, you did a good job with that, didn't you? So they learn the hard way. You know, they then realize, hey, I can get pregnant. I have fertility. A lot of women don't know that. They don't know what fertility encompasses, and they don't know if they really need birth control. That's one way to prove it for them. Proven fertility, as I like to say it. Now let's get you on some real birth control. The other thing I see a lot of, and is reported as failed birth control, one of the things I'd like to tell you as a doctor who does this is that it's really hard to put in IUDs in women who haven't had children. And we've allowed this to happen over the past 10 to 15 years. In the past, we didn't let women who hadn't had children have IUDs, but now we've really pushed them to a big degree because they are very, very reliable. They're no-brainers in a way. They're good for many years, and they also are highly effective. So they're like 99%, 98, 99%. The only problem with them is that they're a challenge to put in young women with little uteruses. And so, especially the ones that don't have hormones in them, the copper ones, as you might have heard of, they can slip easily and they can cause a lot of cramping and bleeding. And it's hard to know, even as a doctor who puts them in and has put them in for years, whether I've put them in the right place. The only way to really tell is if you do an ultrasound. but that requires another skill, and that you have to have a machine. You have to do it. You have to take the time, and you have to know what you're looking at. Most people who are putting in IUDs don't do those things, and they don't know how to do them, but we let them do it. So failed birth control is a real thing. And should we punish women by saying, well, these are women who were trying to do their best to have, be on birth control, be responsible, and then they're pregnant, and then now we're saying, hey, you should just have it. Shame on you. I don't think so. So I want to bring it out that failed birth control is a really big driver of, and the no birth control are probably the big things that we're seeing. Also, there's rape and incest, and a lot of women in communities, especially in the South and in the Black community, they're sort of forced into carrying children. It's sort of it's hard to imagine that you're told by this guy, you're going to have my baby. They're taking off the condom. They're forcing these women into pregnancy because it's a source of control. It's kind of abuse. Sex trafficking and abuse, and rape and incest. When I was a resident in OBGYN in LA, in Los Angeles County, I walked into the ER because the ER doctor said, hey, this girl's got a vagina. I'm like, of course they do. And she's got a lot of pain. Can you come see her? And I said, sure. And I went in, and it took me a few minutes to realize she was very pregnant. She was 14, pregnant. Her father. So I had to go to court a couple days and testify that I was actually the doctor who evaluated her and delivered her baby, which was a product of incest. That was happening in Los Angeles. It's not just out where you think it is. It's everywhere. It's happening. The other thing is maternal health is another reason that we have to do abortions. Women are sicker today. You've heard that from me already. And women who get very sick in pregnancy, heart conditions. The other part of the puzzle that's very difficult for me to understand is we've got this whole field of infertility and getting people pregnant, right? You've seen that on the news. IVF, hormones, boosting women to get pregnant. People who can't go see these doctors. They spend lots of money to get these women pregnant. But a lot of these women, the reason they're not getting pregnant is they're very sick. They have health issues. And the doctors who are doing the IVF often don't really put two and two together. They want to help that patient wants to have babies, but then we don't think of the aftermath of having a pregnancy when you're really ill or significantly overweight and what that means. And then those doctors only see them and get them pregnant, and then those patients transfer over to doctors like me who then have to deal with it. So maternal health is not improving, and it leads to high-risk pregnancies, and these pregnancies often can lead into conditions where the mother's life is really in jeopardy. And even if the mother's life is not about to die, it's that you're going to have such a compromised child from those conditions that it's probably better not to try and have that baby and start over, get healthier, and have a baby the next time that's more healthy. It's a good way to look at it. Complicated again. Finally, we also have women who have abnormal babies. Everything from not having a brain, severe heart defects that are not compatible with life. Sure, you can grow this baby all the way to full term, but this baby will have one ventricle. We can't make another ventricle. We don't have that technology. This baby will die of heart failure. That's just what's going to happen. Knowing that, what would you do? I wouldn't want to go through that pregnancy myself. I would rather say, let's end it and move on and have the time to have another healthy pregnancy. And other patients choose to have that baby, to grow it and have it and see what happens. That's their choice too. We'll get into LR 131 and what the ramifications are of that in a minute. The other thing that's really coming up is, yes, women cannot afford pregnancy. They can't afford to be pregnant because they have to take time off from work or they get fired. They don't get any extra compensation when they're pregnant. And then when you have a baby, you have to take time off before you can go back to work. You have to find childcare if you're going to go back to work. We have a childcare shortage here in Bozeman. A nation that's even worse. So I don't blame them for saying I can't afford this baby. I really don't. Until we change how we want to grow our children and support our women, I'm okay with abortion. Abortion's now banned in these states. You can see it kind of from the screen, all the brown ones. Our neighbors. And these ones, it's severely limited and about to be, they're trying to get bans completely, but it's severely restricted at this point. They're just blocking certain measures of it. But you can see it's about half the United States, and over 40% of the women in the United States now don't have access directly to abortion. Or it's severely limited. That's huge. And more to come. Because here in Montana, Nebraska, Kansas, good thing we have a referendum, Iowa, you know, these states are trying to really block it and make it effectively as much of a ban as possible. I know you guys have probably heard in Montana, what does our legislature want to do? Anybody? We want to follow the Texas playbook. We'd like to ban it completely without any exceptions. That's what Dane said. That's what Gianforte said. Yeah.
How many of those states have in no exceptions include no exceptions for the life of the mother?
Well, that's where they're trying to federate it out in court, right? There's been a lot of heat on Texas, probably has been in the news most, where they say there was one woman who really almost lost her life and they did it. And she came out and spoke about it. And they said, no, she could have it because it would save her life. But the doctors there, it's very hard to say, what is the point where I'm saving her life? Right? What is that point? I don't know what it is. And if I don't know what it is, I bet you the legislature doesn't know it. I'm just guessing. I mean, so yeah, that's right. We want to save saving the life of the mother. How sick does sick have to be? Do you want to wait for her kidney to completely fail or just be partially failed? And we're at 22 weeks. We're not going to get another 2 weeks of this pregnancy. It's always easier and safer to do abortions earlier and earlier than later. Always safer. Less risk, less complication. Do I want to do it at 22 weeks? Safe way with her kidney just starting to fail and her blood pressure starting to creep up before she strokes, or do I need her to stroke first? I mean, these are the things that are not outlined, and it becomes so difficult to be a doctor or to be a patient there. In Montana, abortion is sort of legal. I like to say that because Montana had in 1999, the Armstrong decision did allow abortion to happen under the Privacy Act. But we also have very limited abortion clinics providing abortions. We have 3 Planned Parenthoods in the state. The biggest one probably being in Billings, which had a flood damage, so they're kind of out of commission for a while. We have also Blue Mountain Clinic, which is in Missoula, and All Families Health, which is up in Kalispell. That's not a lot of access. I'll show you a picture of our state. I'm always amazed how big it is. We also have limited number of providers who can do abortions, and they've sought to restrict that to be doctors only, MDs and DOs. They've been unsuccessful in that in the past. So now PAs and nurse practitioners can provide pills, but they're still pushing on that. You have to be a doctor to do it. Then there's only a few doctors, even in my field, who know how to do the D&Es, the more advanced dilation and extraction when they get past 13, 14 weeks. We have to do that. Not many doctors are trained on that. Less doctors were trained during the pandemic than ever. The care and the education of doctors during the pandemic was really limited. They had limited access. Patients, first of all, didn't seek services the way that they should have. And then when they went to the programs, they didn't get as much hands-on time. And we're still trying to recover from that. So you have a limited number of doctors, you have limited access, long drives, the costs are prohibitive for many women. And in Montana, many women who don't have access even to full birth control. Do you know that? Did you know that? I'm going to tell you this because this is the next thing I'm going to write something on. It's going to be my next talk. Okay, so I love to talk about this because it's really wrong. It makes me want to go to law school. I'm going to be a doctor, lawyer. Okay, no, really, Catholic healthcare system, St. Bees, SLC Health, Holy Rosary, Benefice, St. Patrick's, Providence, St. Peter's. They are all under the Catholic umbrella. I'm okay with Catholic umbrella. I'm okay with religion and healthcare. I really am. But the problem with it is that if I go to a healthcare clinic, that healthcare clinic is telling me I can't have an IUD. You can't have your tubes tied in this institution. You can't have a vasectomy. What's that doing? It's decreasing access to birth control. On top of that, you have providers throughout the state and in these institutions who, because of their own personal beliefs and biases, won't talk about birth control or dispense birth control or give prescriptions for it. That creates a huge, in our state in particular, think about what I'm talking about, St. Peter's, Providence, Benefice over in Miles City, St. V's here in SCL Health and in Billings, all the way up in Great Falls, Benefice, no access to birth control or limited, very limited. You've had 4 kids. You see your doctor. Usually doctors say, hey, do you want to have more kids? No, I'm done. 4 is plenty, thank you. Well, let's tie your tubes. We'll be right there anyway. It's a safe procedure. You'll not get pregnant. You're married, you have 4 kids. That doctor doesn't even talk to that patient about it. Or if the patient says, I want to have my tubes tied, the doctor says, sorry, we can't do it here. Not allowed. That happens in a large portion of Montana, and I want to know what that number is. I want to know if it's 50% or more, but I think it's a huge portion. And over the last 10 years, the proportion of hospitals that have been taken over by healthcare or faith-based care has only been growing. It's up around 13 or 14% in America. That's a problem, especially when you're saying we want to decrease the amount of abortions we want to do. That's not helping it. And I think that's wrong. I think that's discrimination. I think it's age and gender discrimination. And women are the ones who are affected the most in these healthcare scenarios, for sure. I think that there should be a lesson for those healthcare organizations and healthcare systems that are under faith to say, okay, we're not going to do it here, but the clinic right across the street that we support, that's not, got our name on it, and we support, you can get it done there. But it's a huge burden then for women. They've just had their baby. It's the easiest time for me to tie tubes, and they can't get it done then. They have to wait 6 months, be postpartum, find another doctor, have another ride, pay another copay or 2, and then go get it done. Who's going to do that? Nobody. Nobody. That's a big problem, and in this state in particular. Okay, I just want to show a map of Montana to show you the 4 abortion clinics. All families, Planned Parenthood in Missoula, Blue Mountains right here too. There's 2. Helena, Planned Parenthood over here. Notice here's Bozeman. Nothing. Nothing. Me, I don't advertise. I'm quiet, I'm closed. And I wasn't allowed to do all the things that I know how to do and I'm trained to do. I didn't get any support from the hospital from it. Nobody's ever said that they're going to kill me for it, but it's too much. We need something bigger here, bigger than me, and we need to continue to talk about this so that everyone understands. Most people don't know this. Yeah.
Like the Bozeman hospital system doesn't have a religious affiliation.
It did, and it was through the United Methodist Church, the Bozeman Deaconess, and lots of their policies were under the Deaconess umbrella. Up until just a week or so ago, when the article came out, they now will do it for women who have babies that are basically non-compatible with life. But they won't do elective abortions. And they've been very quiet about it. Yes, I do know why. Because they've had the same board in place and the same Deaconess Methodist background that abortion is not okay. They do tubal ligations there, though, and they do offer birth control, but they won't do abortions. Often they would refer them out, even for women who were in jeopardy of their health being abnormal or babies, even with anencephaly. They would call me. Can you do it, Putnam? I can't do it. I don't have a hospital to do it in, you do it. You know, it's like, you want me to do it. I'm not supported by the hospital and I don't even have a facility to do it in. And you're a doctor who does more training, gets more money, and wants this to be done and is in charge of that patient, and you can't even take that on and do it yourself. That's a problem. Yeah. Women in the prisons, that's a whole other category. I don't know what the access for abortions for women in prisons is, but I'm gonna guess it's even worse than what it is here in this town. I know in California, where I used to work and where I do still work, there's a lot of access for abortion in prison. We actually had patients who were transported out of the prison to the facility for an abortion and then taken back in shackles to the prison. At least they had that access. Now, I don't know what it is here, honestly. I can't imagine. Almost done, and then we're going to talk. Okay, so let's talk about, switch gears a little bit. I talked to you a lot about abortion, why I think we need them, what's going on in the state, in the nation, why people access it, and what is LR 131. It is the Born Alive Infant Protection Act. And what does it mean? It says it's an act, these are the real words of it, adopting the Born Alive Infant Protection Act, providing that infants that are born alive, including infants born alive after an abortion, and they use the word abortion in this act, are legal persons, requiring healthcare providers to take necessary actions to preserve the life of a born alive infant. And it provides a penalty for those who don't, up to $50,000 and up to 20 years in jail. What this sounds like is, and when you read the fine print, they're trying to say, if a baby's born, you should do everything to keep it alive, especially, not especially, but even ones that are born after an abortion. If they're somehow born alive, preserve that life, doctor, preserve that life, nurse, do everything you can, because on the surface, it may sound kind of good. Of course, we want to try and preserve life and keep babies alive. They say, we don't want to let them die in the corner over there. I mean, that's sort of the implication of this, is that we're letting babies die left and right. And I'm just here to say we're not. Yes, we sometimes have babies that have significant abnormalities that we know are not going to live. In fact, we let mothers go all the way to term with conditions that they choose, and they know that their babies are soon going to die after birth. Those are difficult cases, but they are cases that are important to understand that if this act were to be enacted, we say yes on this, it's going to mean that any baby that's born premature on the cusp, 21-week, 22-week babies without a brain, really we aren't going to be able to have a decision. We're having a law instead tell us, do everything to keep that baby alive. For me, that's going to be really hard to watch, right? See a baby, you know doesn't have a brain. And so it will breathe probably for a minute, two, maybe an hour. You can give it comfort care. Sometimes we give them morphine. We let the parents hold them. It's tragic, it's sad, it's life. But now it's going to say, for people like me and the neonatologists and the nurses, we have to take that baby right out as soon as possible. And if it has a breath, we're really obligated to intubate, put it on a ventilator, give it an IV, medications, incubator, antibiotics, surgeries. A lot of babies born with major chromosomal problems have cardiac defects. So they often will die because their heart is not sustained, will not sustain them, heart failure. There's some literature and there's some doctors who say, well, I can do the repair of that part. Those are incredibly difficult surgeries, expensive, and for what? I'm going to try and keep this baby alive for 3 more months, but this baby will not have an intellect, will not be able to talk, will need to be fed through a tube and a breathing machine. This is so ugly to me, to know that there's going to be a law possibly saying, I can't discuss this with the parents to make a choice that's right for the parents, that I now sort of have to, you know, unless everything's been decided before and is etched in stone and everyone on the team agrees that this baby, it's futile to keep care. Unless that's in place, I have to do everything to keep this baby alive. Yeah.
We already have a constitution or something about the life of the, I can't come up with it. Right. Yeah, how much does this differ from that is appealing? And it's probably the baby, you know, keeping the baby up or something, but we do have some.
We do already.
Yeah.
What do you think I do as a doctor? Like I could be held in court, medical malpractice, right? If I just let a baby die, I'm going to be held up to a court. I don't want to do that. No doctor goes in saying we want to try and kill babies. I mean, that's not the point. The problem, and this isn't about, this is actually an act spelling out, we have to keep babies alive. Medical care, person, baby born with any sign of life will be considered a person. It's still incredibly vague, and you're right to point this out. It doesn't clearly state every case that it's going to cover, but the default is I'm going to interpret it that's going to cover everything. I can't justify not doing that when, and I may be one, and my other teammate here may both agree this is a futile case and that this baby isn't going to make it, and that we induce this baby so that this baby could be held by its mother and father and die in its arms normally. But this person over here, who happens to be pro-life and really thinks that that's a poor decision, will turn me in and say, she didn't do everything. So,
yeah, so the major difference is the penalties that have been added to this versus what we already have.
I think it's also trying, this is why we call it abortion sort of on the line. It's penalizing people like me and other obstetricians for inducing abortions, which is one of the abortion types. We induce abortions often, and those babies sometimes are born with faint signs of life. And because a lot of people in the legislature who wrote this act thought we shouldn't have abortions at all, they put this on instead to penalize people like me. It's basically a witch hunt, I feel, a little bit witch hunty, and trying to dissuade doctors like myself from doing this. Even though when I'm doing this, it's really what patients want. Because I give them the options. I could have done a D&E on this patient earlier, and that's still allowed, but sometimes patients choose to carry a pregnancy to a point and induce it and have that bonding with that baby and have that baby pass in their arms. Yes.
I totally understand your position and support it hardly, but from a legal perspective, it would seem to me that if this gasping fetus, therefore life, has followed an abortion, since this is statutory language and Armstrong is based on constitutional right to privacy,
Right.
Why wouldn't Armstrong supplant it?
They have said that if LR 131 passes, that they will challenge it in court.
Right.
They will, on the constitutional basis of Armstrong. You're correct. I think the message that this sends, though, is really important. So the MMA, the Montana Medical Association, doctors groups from Missoula here, Planned Parenthood, Blue Mountain, even a lot of the maternal fetal medicine doctors have come out to say, we really strongly encourage you to vote no on LR 131. The problem is that if this passes, it's creating a feeling for us as providers and in the healthcare system here of surveillance. And also it will push doctors like myself out of Montana. Because why would I want to work in this state where I get paid less and I'm surveillanced and I'm not allowed to do the things that I know how to do without people watching over me? Or why shouldn't I go back and just work all the time in California where I'm paid more and I have protections? The ramifications of this are that it will drive healthcare providers out of Montana. And it will also drive, I think, patients, they will be driven out to get their care outside of Montana further. And already we have a healthcare shortage and healthcare provider shortage in Montana. Yes.
Should the people who were responsible for putting this on the ballot be held accountable?
Well, they are happily putting this on the ballot. There was a couple legislators, I think it was Rick Reichter is his name, a Republican. I know Knutson is really in favor of this proposal and was happy to get it on the ballot. We have a different thinking in our legislature and in a lot of Montana. And the question is, how much of Montana really thinks this way? Or how many people in Montana are going to turn out to vote for this who understand what this implies? And it was written in such a way, I think, that's so vague and unclear and intentionally so. Yes, I couldn't agree more. And it's trying to send a referendum on abortion, just the way that Kansas did when they voted, yes, we want to protect our abortion rights.
Okay, what do we do?
What do we do? What do we do?
I've read it, I've already filled it. There will be some effort to try to dissect what was really going on.
What do I mean? Babies will be born and treated automatically, regardless. Okay. Doctors will be watched. Parents will have little to say. Costly interventions and life-saving measures will be done. Babies will end up in the NICU more often. The secondary ramifications of this is that bills will not get paid and will fall onto taxpayers. These bills for a child to get intubated, put on a respirator, day in the NICU, medications, nursing, advanced medical care. We are talking $10,000 a day or more. There was an article not too long ago, I think it was in the New York Times or might have been in the Post, might have even been in the Wall Street Journal, but it was talking about outlining a care of a baby who was born with severe deformities. And the parents actually didn't want the baby to be resuscitated, but the doctors did. This is before, it has nothing to do with LR 131 directly. The parents were billed $1.25 million, $1.25 million. The parents received that bill. Do people understand why we've got this rising homelessness in America? Do you think this is going to help? No. And at a certain point, certain things are considered experimental. They don't fall underneath the umbrella of healthcare. Your healthcare insurance, have you read the whole thing about what your insurance covers and covers? Doesn't? I haven't read mine, but I can tell you right now, the gray language in that and the ambiguity, and we don't cover this, and the experimental quality of that is really, it traps parents, and parents have no say sometimes. They have no understanding of it. The average person, doctors, we don't know really what the cost of the care we're giving people. I know a lot more now that I opened my own clinic, and I was able to look at the cost of what I do for patients. And the flip side of that is I was able to look at what the insurance companies cover and don't cover, and what this insurance covers for it versus this one. It's not the same. And what you can think of as being preventative care for one insurance may not be the same for another. And what ultimately these rising deductibles, who has an extra $8,000 laying around at home just to meet their medical deductible for the year? Not many Americans, most Americans, and a lot of Americans, many Americans in Montana are living paycheck to paycheck more and more. This is a crisis, people. Anyway, we don't go there today either. That's another lecture. Okay, so it's going to bankrupt families. It's going to cause a huge healthcare crisis here, as well as a burden on our taxpayers. That's important to understand. We have to think of the economics here. People are going to turn each other in, surveillance. This is awful. And doctors will leave to take other jobs. And then that's going to decrease the quality of healthcare again in Montana. Yeah.
Who decides what is appropriate
Oh,
and reasonable
great.
medical care?
That seems reasonable. That's appropriate. What does even the word appropriate mean for healthcare? What's reasonable? What's alive? Really? What's dead? I mean, these are really big gray areas. Thanks for bringing out that language too. Medically reasonable. Because one doctor over here can say it's medically reasonable for you to intubate her, Dr. Putnam, and make sure you give her oxygen because she's alive. And another one can say that's not medically reasonable. That baby doesn't have a brain, but it has lungs, has 2 arms and 2 legs, and eyeballs. Yes.
Just a quick comment to that. I think that's one reason why it might be found unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional debate because it's impossible to know those things. And one thing I just wanted to mention, I think that third bullet, parents will have little say, is really, really important because I can imagine legislators saying, oh, we'll just control the doctors. None of us are doctors. We'll just put it on someone else. But many people are parents. And what this is saying, when you read the statute, it says the parents no longer have any role in healthcare for this child. It's the doctor who's governed by the state. So now the state, the minute this baby is born, now the state controls those healthcare decisions, which violates our rights. Right. But I think that, unfortunately, you're a doctor, I really appreciate what you're doing. It's easy because most of us are not doctors to say, well, this is your problem. But when you talk about it from a parent's perspective, it provides a choice.
Community perspective, right?
And a
Community. When doctors are surveilled by non-doctors and forced to do laws that have no real basis in true healthcare, you're just creating a terrible healthcare environment for all. And you're right, it is the most important one. Always, I think the decisions have to come down to patients, parents, the ones who have to care for those children ultimately and live with those decisions. But taking that out of that hands, and then forcing medical bills and seeing the torture, really a lot of it is torture. When you take a little baby and you see that you blow out their lungs with the ventilator and they've got brain bleeds and you see all the things that you're trying to help them with, but you're hurting the babies and they're so tiny and so fragile. It's really hard to watch that happen, and to know that you're doing it, because if you don't do it, this doctor who's really pro-life is going to call on you, and you could go to court and possibly face, just the time. It's never fun to go to court. I'm just going to tell you that. Luckily, I've never been sued. I'd like to keep it that way, knock on wood, but it's not fun to go in front of lawyers and to try and explain what you did and why you did it, and to have another doctor on the other side of the court, say, well, she didn't do everything, and to really question, because it's an ugly scene and costly. It's moral and mental and financial trauma for us. And I know there are not many doctors who would break this law, as I wrote, but there are many who will break under it. It's really important to understand that. And there will be doctors who will get up and leave. Because why would you want to be in that environment when you can go 1 or 2 states away and make more money and not have to deal with that? And why, as a parent, would you want to have a pregnancy in this state where there's not good health care and not the right healthcare decisions that you can make for yourself? Why wouldn't you go 2 states away? Yes.
The medical abortions, getting back to that.
Yes.
What is the status here in Montana then? If a woman wants, goes on one of these websites and investigates that.
Yes, there's a good website nationally called Just the Pill. You might have heard of it. It does provide telehealth visits for patients, for women, and provides medication mailed to them. And they are working on workarounds to be able to mail those pills. It's 2 pills for a medication, 2 sets of pills for a medication abortion. We give them mifepristone, which stops the growth of the pregnancy by blocking progesterone. And then we give them another medication called misoprostol, which you take 24 hours later, which helps you contract and pass the pregnancy like a miscarriage. You bleed it out. That's what a medication abortion is. It's most effective before 10 weeks. It's actually the most effective if you do it before 49 days of pregnancy, but it's really effective all the way up to 10 weeks and even 11 weeks in pregnancy. And they've been studying it, obviously, in 3rd world countries, more in Africa and things, all the way up to 14 and 15 weeks. It has some efficacy there, but not as much. So we've really limited it here in the United States to about the 10, 11 week mark by most instances. Yes, we have a huge way we can mail these pills from a telehealth visit from states. The problem is that the doctors who are doing the telehealth visits have to be dual. You have to be certified or licensed in multiple states to be able to mail it across state lines. And now we're looking at bypassing it by mailing it. The doctor sees you in one state. The medicine's coming maybe from Canada or even from India in non-conspicuous ways. It's very, and it's sort of a good underground method, I think, in a way, although, do we really have to be underground about it? I guess so.
When the men have no interest in supporting children.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, really, no one makes men wear condoms. There's no law for that. There's no law that says a man has to help the woman through the pregnancy, support that child, and raise that child. There's no laws on that.
What was the website for that?
It's called Just the Pill. Just the Pill. And then also you can go to the website called abortionfinder.org, which will help link you to abortion resources in your own state or in another state. There are also other availability of, there's like abortion support network, which can help get you funding to travel states. That's especially important. So there's a whole network of resources. Abortionprovider.org or abortionprovider.org is a very helpful website, and Just the Pill. But look at what's happening here in Montana. They are trying, we have some legislation coming down the pipeline, right? One is that we are trying right now to block abortion after 20 weeks. There is a bill that is in process, and there are lots of legislatures who would like us to have this. We'd like you to say, if you want to have an abortion, sure, you got to go see a doctor or a provider who can do an ultrasound, and you have to look at the ultrasound before you sign up for the abortion. How many people can get to a place where they can have an abortion provider who can actually do an ultrasound? Because a lot of Planned Parenthood, they don't even do ultrasounds for all their patients. It's slowly cracking down and restricting abortion, so much so that it will soon be just kind of like Texas. And look at all the states around us. The Dakotas are, I'm wondering if we can run across the border to Canada. I haven't learned about that yet, but maybe I'll drive a bus or something. Last thing, I think I'm almost done. So how can we really truly reduce abortions without a ban? This is something I've been thinking a lot about, because I think at the heart of it, all of us really would love to do no more abortions than we absolutely have to. I'd love it if we didn't have to do abortions for women with healthy babies and healthy moms. I think that would be reasonable. I also really would love to not have to do any abortions at all after about 14, 15, 16 weeks. It's much easier, it's safer. Obviously, we don't want to have the abortion rate rise. We want to promote life. I think everybody does, no matter who you are or where you're from. But to do that, we have to give every woman health care in the United States. About 10% or more of women in America don't have any health care. That means not Medicaid, no access. They just don't have health care. We also need to give women access to providers and clinics. Do you know we have maternal health care deserts, even in the state, where for over 2 or 3 hours, you can't find a doctor like me? That's a long time. There's not even a clinic that you can go to that has all the access, or the provider that can do what I can do. We also need to educate our women. I do little funny, I love to be funny. I do funny shows. It's the main thing I love to do. Funny educational shows for women about their bodies. And I like to talk about vaginas and vulvas, and I like to paint them. And I like to talk about ovaries and cysts and reproduction and fertility grafts and infertility and what that is. But without that kind of education, and it's surprising to me, women in Montana, in this town, don't know these things. So there's a big learning gap. And if you can imagine, think about the lack of information for our teenagers and young 20-year-olds who just don't know. And that's a problem. I also think we really should have absolutely 100% free birth control, and we should have it pretty much on every corner. I mean, it would be great. I mean, right? Like having someone come in and just sort of one-stop shopping. I'm thinking of opening my health clinic to do just that, to just be a drop-in birth control center, abortion prevention, we'll call it. And just like, come on in, get your birth control that you need, and it's covered. They don't have to pay me a dime. I don't have to bill the damn insurance and spend 3 hours haggling with them. And it's just, they walk out and I know that they've got about as best birth control as I can give them. And that's going to give them about 99%. It's about as good as we can get. But that's darn well. And if every woman had that, that would be a huge change. Yeah.
It's been a while since I've used it. How much does birth control cost?
Great question. So, such a great question.
Great question.
So if you wanted to go get a female condom, by the way, which if you've ever tried to put one in, let me tell you not to try. They are these big things that look like a long rubber, and you have to kind of sideways slip them in and put them in. I tried once. It was very hard, even for a gynecologist with my dexterity. And those cost $7 each. Thank you very much. Men can buy condoms. Usually they come for $5 or $6 for a 3-pack or so, but you can get them often at clinics for free if you go to them. Let's talk about pills, birth control pills, everywhere from about, with a health insurance plan and a copay, everywhere from $0 for some women we're very lucky who have that really covered, but generics even $5, $10 a month, all the way up to $50, $100 a month. Yeah, that's if you can get it, because a lot of times there's shortage or we don't have that type. And if your doctor wrote for one and they don't have it at the pharmacy, let me tell you, it takes 3 or 4 days to get back to that doctor to ask them to write for something different. So pills, the patches are even more expensive. Those are the ones you slap on your butt. They last for a week. They're only about 95% effective as well. I mean, these are the reality of it, right? And these patches are expensive. The rings, they throw up the vagina for 3 weeks. They're $100, $150. IUDs, $900, $1,000. They last for up to 5 or 6 years, sometimes 10 really if you use the copper ones, but a lot of people bleed them out, they slip or they hate them. And we're not even talking about side effects here. A lot of birth control is a burden for women. It doesn't feel good. They don't like it, and it's expensive. And it doesn't always work. Great. Nobody would buy a car like that. All right, so I do think we need to improve pre-pregnancy health, as I said, of women, really improve the health of women. We need to lose weight. We need to decrease diabetes, high blood pressure, all of these things are associated with it, and we're not doing any of that. We're making it worse. I also think we have to work on drugs, mental health illness. Wow, we have a crisis in that. And it didn't get better with the pandemic, by the way. We also have to really talk about decreasing poverty and supporting women, single women, women with children. Increase the payment and support of women who want pregnancies. I think we should pay women to have healthy pregnancies, incentivize them, and also improve adoption. Adoption is so ridiculously hard in this nation. It's a crime, in my opinion. I mean, if I were a pregnant person who was young and healthy, and I was hard under the money and I loved to have babies, but I knew I wasn't ready for one, and I knew abortion was banned, and this doctor said to me, look, you know, this couple over here, or these couples over here really are looking for babies, just like yours, and they're ready to have a baby. We're going to pay you $10,000 to have your baby, stay off drugs, be healthy. We're going to care